Mr. President, honorable members of the Union, our distinguished guests on the proposition bench, thank you for the floor. I rise today, the day after the solemn anniversary that haunts every Mumbaiker, to oppose the motion that India's policy towards Pakistan is populism disguised as security policy. Apologies for the mic. In plain terms, I stand here to tell you that not only is this claim false, but it is a fundamental misreading of my country's reality. And I do so not just as a member of the Oxford Union, but as a Mumbaiker, but as someone who has lived through the consequences of the India-Pakistan saga in his own home and heart. Yesterday was 26/11, November 26th, which in my city is not an ordinary date on the calendar. It marks the day when, in 2008, 10 terrorists stormed across iconic sites across my hometown, unleashing 3 days of bloodshed. One of those targets was Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Terminus, the very station that my aunt passed through almost every evening. By chance or by providence, she took a different train home that night, narrowly escaping the fate of the 166 souls that did not. Another target was the Taj Mahal Palace Hotel, where my best friend's father, a major in the National Security Guard, was one of the first commandos to rappel into a burning inferno. I was a schoolboy then, glued to the television as my city burned. I remember the fear in my mother's voice on the phone, the tension in my father's clenched jaw. For 3 nights, Mumbai did not sleep, and neither did I. As a child, I learned too early that security is not an abstract policy issue. It is the difference between life and death, the difference between a phone call from a loved one or a silence that lasts forever. I share this, not to darken the mood, but to ground this debate in reality. For me, this isn't just an intellectual exercise. It's painfully personal. The railway station, 200 meters from my childhood home, was bombed in the 1993 serial blasts that killed over 250 people. I grew up under the shadows of these tragedies. My parents, who are here in the chamber tonight, listening anxiously to their son, raised me with the stories of those dark days and the mantra that we must always be alert. So when someone claims that India's tough stance towards Pakistan is merely populism masquerading as security policy, you might understand why I bristle. It sounds like someone telling you that the locks on your doors are just for show, not because there are robberies in the neighborhood. But before we delve deeper into that notion, let me first address the 3 gentlemen arrayed against me. A rather formidable proposition bench, if there ever was one. They say this house loves a good show. My opponents have certainly delivered on the casting. First, we have our union president, Mr. Musa Haraj, leading the charge for the proposition. Musa is not only the president of this union, he's also a Pakistani by birth and a very, very dear friend of mine. In fact, as his chief of staff, I've spent months working with him, which makes tonight a tad bit awkward, because technically, I'm supposed to make him look good. But here I am, last night, writing his speech for him. Musa, you've had an interesting term, haven't you? Just a few weeks ago, he said...
Point of information.
Yes.
So you're admitting in a chamber that what I just said was written by an Indian you.
To respond... I shall gladly admit that sometimes it takes an Indian to clean up the incompetence of a Pakistani. Now, Musa, you've had an interesting term, haven't you? Just a few weeks ago, Musa survived a historic no-confidence vote right here in the Oxford Union. For the uninitiated, yes, Oxford Union presidents sometimes face more rebellions than actual heads of state. The vote failed, and Musa sailed through unscathed with a thumping majority, making him, arguably, the only Pakistani origin leader in history to face a no-confidence vote and remain in power the next morning. I tease my friend, of course, but there's a serious point. Musa's victory was a triumph of transparent, open, and democratic processes. An Oxford Union specialty. Now, only if some folks in Rawalpindi could say the same. And look who sits with you. The glorious ghost of the presidency's past. we have Ahmed Nawaz, the president for Michaelmas term 2022. Ahmed, you're a man of resilience. You survived the horrors of the APS attack. You have my utmost respect for that for the rest of my life. But you also survived, barely so, the internal politics of this chamber. You hold the unique distinction of being the only Pakistani president in history who was not removed by a coup, but an auto-resignation. An auto-resignation for missing access committee meetings. Now, the official record says that you were busy. We all saw the Instagram stories of you doing shots with Bad Baby. Now, does an Oxford Union president have to be caught outside? Following on, we have Isra Khan, the president of Hillary term 2025. Isra, this is a special moment for me. In my first term here, you were Ahmed's chief of staff. You were the man behind the throne. You watched him fall, you fought the dirty politics, and like a true survivor, you climbed the ladder to become president yourself. I'm the chief of staff now. I have seen the walk that you walked. I have taken notes. You taught me that the Oxford Union, like in Islamabad, chaos isn't a pit. Chaos is a ladder. So when I look at you over there, arguing against India having mastered British institutional survivalism, I don't know whether to rebut you or ask you for a reference letter. Now, that we're all acquainted with the spirit of the Oxford Union debate, a bit of bite, a bit of banter, let's get to the meat of the matter. The motion asserts that India's policy towards Pakistan is populism disguised as security policy. In other words, that India cynically fashions its Pakistan strategy just to win votes or applause rather than to genuinely protect itself. As the first speaker of the opposition, I reject this wholeheartedly. I will show you, step by step, how India's policy is primarily driven by legitimate security concerns and not cheap populism. And in doing so, I shall also flip the mirror to our friends, because if any nation has suffered from the leaders who wrap themselves in the flag for popularity, it isn't India, it is Pakistan. The proposition's argument is seductive. It suggests that the Indian states manufacture its threats. We invent boogeymen, that we use the border as a ballot box to whip up votes. They argue that when India strikes back, we're not protecting our citizens, we're performing for them. To win this debate, I do not need to use rhetoric. I simply need to use a calendar. If the proposition is true, if the Indian security policy is just populism, then crises should corroborate with the elections. The bomb should go off when the polls open. Let us look at the data and let us be inductive. I grew up in the heart of Mumbai. My home was not too far from where in March 1993, RDX explosives ripped through Plaza Cinema. It was a part of a coordinated series of 12 blasts that turned my city into a morgue. 257 people died. I was not born there, but I grew up with the crater it left in our psyche. Now ask yourself, was there an election in March 1993? No. That election was 3 years away. Was the government looking for a populist distraction? No. The government was weak. The economy was opening up and we were desperate for stability. Terror did not come because we needed a vote. It came because Dawood and the ISI wanted to fracture India's financial spine. That was not populism. That was an act of war. I remember my aunt, once again, vividly, traveling through Chhatrapati Shivaji terminus. She pulled out of the train station at 9:27 p.m. and the terrorists entered at 9:30. 3 minutes is the difference between my aunt watching from home tonight and her being engraved in a memorial stone in South Bombay. 10 men held the city of 20 million hostage. Now look at the policy response. The proposition says that India is populist. What would a populist government do after 26/11? The public rage was nuclear. I remember it. We wanted blood. We wanted the Air Force to flatten the training camps in Mudarke. A populist leader would have just launched the jets to win the next election. But the government of the day, the Congress party, chose strategic restraint. They chose diplomacy. They chose to send dossiers. They appealed to the international community. They appealed to you. Did it work? Did the non-populist approach buy us peace? No. It bought us Pathankot. It bought us Uri. It bought us Pulwama. We learned a hard lesson, Mr. President. You cannot shame a state that has no shame. Let's move to the present. 6 months ago, the proposition claims the skirmishes this May were electioneering. Check the dates. The elections for the Indian General Parliament were over. The government was secure. Apologies. The government was secure. On 22nd of April, terrorists from the Resistance Front, a cheap rebrand of the Lashkar-e-Toiba, attacked tourists in Pahalgam. They dragged out 26 people and killed them for their religion. They didn't ask who they voted for. They executed them. India's response, Operation Sindoor, was launched on the 7th of May. Note the name, Sindoor, the vermilion mark of a Hindu wife. It was not Operation Thunder or Operation Wrath. It was named for the widows created by that massacre. It was a surgical dismantling of 9 launch pads. We degraded radar systems in Lahore. We punished the perpetrators. And then what? We stopped. We did not invade. We did not occupy. We did not hold a parade in Delhi. We re-established deterrence and went back to work. That is not populism. That is professionalism. The proposition confuses popular with populist. Yes, Mr. President, defending your citizens from being murdered is popular. Providing clean water is popular. Keeping the railways safe is popular. That does not make it a trick. Populism is promising easy answers to complex problems. Security is doing the hard, expensive, dangerous work of ensuring that a child in Dadar can go to the cinema without being blown up. But if you want to see the actual populism disguised as security, you must only look across the Radcliffe line. When India launched Operation Sindoor, how did Pakistan respond? Did it fix its security gaps? No. Operation Bunyan al-Masus was launched. The solid cemented wall, a Quranic reference designed not for tactical efficacy, but for religious mobilization. You launched missiles at our bases in Udhampur, had them shot down, had 11 bases struck, and achieved at best a tactical stalemate. And then, after all of that, what do? You release a music video. The ISPR, your military's PR wing, released an anthem, Dharkan Pe Ek Hi Naam, Pakistan. Mr. President, when India fights a war, we debrief the pilots. In Pakistan, they auto-tune the chorus. You held victory rallies on the 16th of May. You declared a national holiday. Why? Because you cannot give your people bread, so you must give them the circus. You cannot fix the price of flour, so you fixate on the Indian threat. You need the enemy of the gate. Without the Indian monster, your own people may turn around and ask why generals own Papa John's franchises while the country defaults on its loans. That is populism. That is the alchemy of turning public poverty into private power with the specter of war. When you vote for this motion, you are telling the widows of Pahalgam that their grief is just a prop for the government. You are telling my parents sitting right there that the fear that they felt when the windows shook in '93, or the panic they felt when my aunt didn't answer the phone in 2008 was just a disguise. It's easy to deconstruct security policy in the Oxford Union. Our walls are thick, our windows are well plastered. The world feels safe. We can debate narratives and discourse over pork and cheese, but out there in the real world, the wolf is at the door. India has decided to stop feeding the wolf. We've decided to stop sending it dossiers. We have decided to shoot it. That is not populism. That is the biological imperative of a nation that refuses to die. We do not want war. We want to be boring neighbors. We want to trade onions and electricity. We want to play your cricket team without worrying if the away team is bringing bats to C4. But until the state that defends itself stops using terror as an instrument of foreign policy, we will keep our powder dry, we will keep our radars on, and we will keep our guards up. If that is populism, then I am a populist. If that is a disguise, then I will wear it, because the alternative is not liberalism. The alternative is 2611 on repeat. Tonight, I may have been belligerent in defending my country's stance, but I also hope that I've been fair and factual. I do not hate Pakistan. I truly wish to see a Pakistan that is safe, stable, prosperous, and at peace with us. I dream of a day where I could take a train from Mumbai to Lahore and have kebabs in Gawar Mandi, or when the Indian cricket team captain and the Pakistani cricket team captain can joke about their schools, their kids' schools, because politics has ceased to matter. I'm an idealist by heart, but unfortunately, I'm a realist by circumstance. But for that day to come, we must first deal in truth. And the truth is, calling India's Pakistan policy populism in disguise is a dangerous distortion. It implies that we're all just play acting, that there's no wolf on the door, but there is. Recognizing this wolf doesn't mean we should keep living in fear of it. It just means that we need to know that to have the bigger stick when you're trying to build the bigger fence. Perhaps in a not so distant future, a young debater from Mumbai and a young debater from Lahore, Quetta, or Peshawar will stand here not to argue about war and policy, but to argue about who has the better music, or who has the better biryani, Obviously, the answer to both is India. Jokes aside, that is the debate I want to have. We aren't there yet. To get there, we must first ensure that policy is rooted in reality and security and not lost in the fog of propaganda. India is doing its part by treating security with the gravity it deserves. Populism, we leave to the TV studios. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you to oppose the motion. Thank you.